Help me, my brother, can you lend me a hand as I walk through this land of confusion? If we give to each other, then there's nothing to take. Let's live life for the moment before it slips away.
Hey. Jillian, you're still muted. Okay, well, anyway, I'm sure Jillian will figure out how to unmute herself eventually. It would be not the last life ever if we did not have these kind of technical issues. Yes, I think
did it.
You did. Yes, that's great.
No, it wouldn't be a show if we didn't have technical difficulties. Okay. What's going on with you?
Well, not a whole lot really. I have this thing I'm going to do called The Last Life Ever. It's a podcast. Oh wait, you guys know about that. So no, listen, I had a good day actually. I went out to lunch with my dad, which is nice. You know, the post-COVID world starting to open back up thing. I found out that Michigan's going to open up in a week, a little bit anyway, like phase 1 or something. So that's pretty exciting. I think our guest will be pretty happy about that because she's up in Michigan. And I went and looked at an apartment complex today, which was fun too. So that's about it for me.
Oh, that's awesome. So, you know, it's funny you say about Michigan opening up because Hawaii is not going to open up for another 2 weeks at least.
Yeah, so. Well, I mean, that's kind of interesting because, like, you would think that Hawaii would be able to open up sort of different islands at different times, right? Because if they're not allowing flights between the islands, and I really don't know, but it would seem like they would be able to say, hey, this island has, like, you know, no cases, we can open up. It's something we talked about with Michigan before in one of our happy hours, right? The upper peninsula of Michigan is not really, I mean, it's part of Michigan technically, but it's separated by 5 miles of water. And last I checked, well, the coronavirus is very contagious. It can't jump 5 miles of water. If it could, we would all have it already and it wouldn't really matter. So the idea that the lower and upper peninsula of Michigan had the same restrictions doesn't make a lot of sense. And I kind of feel Hawaii is probably in a similar situation. So, but it's just off the cuff. I have no idea. So what else is...
Well, we were supposed to go to Hawaii. I mean, I should say we were supposed to go because that sounds very pessimistic of me. But we are supposed to go to Hawaii as my law firm's supposed to go to Hawaii as a company trip at the end of August. And so everybody there is hoping that we open up real soon or Hawaii opens up real soon. I'm not as optimistic as some of the other employees might be.
Speaking of your employees, I know you don't like it when I put comments on screen, but it just seemed like the perfect comment. So for the people that are watching or listening on the podcast, Lauren says Belize is open, wink, wink. And Lauren, I believe, works for Jillian at the law firm.
Yeah,
so
no, but you know what is so great? Because I actually really want to go to Belize. I've been wanting to go to Belize for a really long time. So don't worry, Lauren. Jill's got your back. We're gonna make something happen. Something awesome happen.
Well, listen. Let me know when you want to do that because I love Belize. It's a great place. A couple of times, yeah. In fact, one of my favorite trips ever was a cruise that had a stop in Belize, and it was the first, maybe the second cruise we ever went on, and this was like back. I mean, this is like 15 years ago now, something like that. And now the cruise port in Belize City is completely different. But then you could walk out of the port, walk down the street to the local water taxi location, and for like $2, you could get on a speedboat and it would take you to one of the keys. And so we went to this key, like 2 hours by speedboat away from Belize City, and went swimming with sharks and stingrays by ourselves. Just it was my wife and it was my dad and his wife. So the four of us went like out into the middle of nowhere and like went swimming with sharks, and it was amazing. It was one of the best things I've ever done on a cruise, and it's so beautiful there. Every time I go back to Belize, though, I'm disappointed because it's not as cool as it used to be.
Well, don't tell me that.
Well, listen, you have no comparison point, so it'll be fine for you. But look, I've never spent extended amounts of time in Belize. The problem with Belize City is it's not very attractive. And if you do come in on a ship, then you don't really have that much time in Belize. So you really don't have a lot of good options. It's not actually a particularly good cruise port. But if you can get away from the city like we did the first time we were there, it's super beautiful. Everything seems really laid back. So I definitely want to go and spend more time in Belize rather than just like 10 hours or whatever.
Well, I'll let you know. Maybe we'll have a little last life ever trip there. But we're planning on going to Amber. Well, if we were going to go, I would go to Ambergris Key. That's what.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually so interestingly. San Pedro, right? This is sorry. I have to put this one up too. So Lauren's apparently decided she met the Maldives instead of Belize.
We're going to Belize, girlfriend.
I mean, I think you should just do both. I mean, why not, right? But
last Lilo, whatever we came up with.
Yeah, well, listen, if your law firm is paying for these trips, I'm going to be applying to work at your law firm along with all of our other listeners because they're like, hey, we just get to travel the world and do, no work apparently because we're always going.
No. What?
I mean, listen, all kidding aside, though, when we went to Belize, actually, San Pedro's where Ambergris, or however you want to say it, I've heard it said like 10 different ways, but that's about 2 hours. And that's very close to where we went swimming with sharks. And it's very beautiful up there. And of course, 15 years ago, the population in San Pedro was much, much smaller than it is now. It was just a little fishing village. So I think even the keys have changed somewhat, but you can't change the natural beauty. It's actually a little bit like, our guest for next week, Dr. Ian Pearson. He came on my other show and talked about his investing ideas, and his main idea was to invest in pretty places. So maybe we should just make it like a last life ever investing excursion, and we can do both of those things, right? We can invest in a pretty place and visit pretty places at the same time.
That might not be a bad idea. I might be into that. So, all right, I want to talk about something that I saw on your Facebook, and that is that your wife, Miss Becky, did a bunch of meal prep this weekend. So are we embracing a new healthy lifestyle, Jeff? What's going on?
Yeah. So, we have a diet bet that ended yesterday. I don't know if you want to talk about that or not, but I failed miserably. Hopefully you won the diet bet, but I'm definitely not winning. Weigh-ins today or tomorrow. And you have to lose like 4% of your body weight in a 6-week period or something like that. I did not do that. I was very unsuccessful. In fact, I weigh like 1 pound more than I did the beginning of the 6 weeks, which actually is probably a win because, otherwise the first 6 weeks of shutdown, I think I gained like 20 pounds. So this is actually an improvement over where I would have been if I hadn't done step bet and diet bet. But we decided it was time to get a little bit more serious about that. So we did that, and actually Becky did all of the work. I went shopping with her. That was about the extent of what I did. And I ate one of the meals today, and it was delicious, actually. So far, so good.
That's awesome. That is such a great habit to get in. I haven't, unfortunately, been into that habit of meal prepping. And I'm very fortunate, though, because Derek actually oftentimes when this podcast is going, he will bring me my dinner and put it next to me. And it's sitting there waiting for me when the podcast is over. Especially early on in the shutdown, I was so busy with just trying to organize and get things done and do this and do that. And he would just randomly bring me food at random points in the day.
Yeah, I mean,
puppy.
That's great if it's healthy food. It's not so great if he's bringing you like, extra cheese pepperoni pizzas every day. So
no, it was pretty healthy food. It was just
yeah.
the volume, like, because he would bring me food for every meal.
Yeah, well, listen, we all have our own challenges. So how do you think you did on the diet bet? Have you weighed in? Do you think you're going to win, or
I'll do it after this. I don't think I'm going to be successful. I think I'm going to be okay, but I don't think I'm going to be completely successful.
Well, try to just not eat anything tonight, and maybe run around in circles to sweat out a little bit of weight, and then weigh in the morning. Maybe you'll have a chance. I'm too far away. I would have to, no, you shouldn't be drinking that right now, even if it's just water, because you need to flush your system out, right? Like if you want to try to win by tomorrow, you need to dehydrate yourself. So turn the heat up, put on a sweatsuit, and run around in circles.
I think I am drinking water. I think up in my closet, somewhere in the recesses of my closet, I have one of those like plastic suits that you can put on to sweat. Right. I'm going to go put that on after this and take a picture of myself for all of you.
Yeah, but for what it's worth, look, if you lost the diet bet, which I'm pretty confident I did, don't stress on it. Just like, it's like anything in life, you just got to move to the next thing. I think, what is it, like $40 or something? I think if $40 ruins my life, I have much bigger problems than losing a diet bet. So, but the step bet, I'm not losing. I won the last one. And how'd you do on that last one? I can't remember.
Shut up. You really know well what happened on the last one. I was out in the second day.
Right. And the first day is a free day. So you were actually out at the first possible option. You failed miserably. I've actually never witnessed anyone drop out by day 2, but apparently it's possible. But listen, so there's a new step bet. It started today. It's warm-up week, so people can still join. And the game code is Last Life Ever. So if you go to stepbet.com and search for Last Life Ever, or just go in our group or on one of our personal Facebook pages, you should be able to find the link directly to that. And it's $40. You get your own step goals, and everyone can win, right? It's not like you're competing against other people. You're competing against your own goals. So anyway, I think, maybe it's time to move on to our jokes. How do you feel about that?
I feel pretty good about that. I'm feeling all right about my joke.
Okay. Do you want to go first then? Are you that confident, or do you need a little warm-up time?
All right, I'll go first.
All right.
So I have three boys, and my middle boy, Tom, came to me one day at school, and after school, I came to pick him up at school, and we're walking out of school, and he says to me, he's very upset, and he goes, "Mom, I got in trouble today at school for something I didn't do." And I, of course, as the protective mom, I got very, very irate. What? You got in trouble for something you didn't do? Tell me what you didn't do. Tell me what it was that you got accused of not doing. And he goes, "My homework."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the same joke I was going to tell.
No,
of course not. I don't have any children, and my middle son's not named Tom. So, so we know that wasn't the joke I was going to tell.
Well, no, but it could have been there was a boy who.
Yeah, no, I know. Actually, I do know a joke with 3 people in it, and their names are Tom, Dick, and Harry, but it's a little bit long, and I'll tell it a different time. So I'm going to tell this joke about school because, the topic of the day today is homeschooling and sort of thriving during a sort of COVID shutdown with children. So did you hear the one about the cross-eyed teacher?
No.
He couldn't control his pupils.
Oh my God, you're a horrible human being.
It's so great though. Like, it's a really good one. And I think I might be wrong about that. I mean, I can't say for sure, but I believe our guest today will actually be perfectly fine with that joke. What do you say, Karen?
Oh man, Jeff, that was pretty corny.
Well, that's kind of the goal.
Karen, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you that can't read the above, or you didn't read the description, just decide to click and see what's going on. Karen is the mama of 5 wonderful kids, and she homeschools them, which I find bananas. And so she is going to give us some tips and tricks on how to keep our children educated through the time, and maybe give ourselves a little discipline, because it's been a hot mess for me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, my kids' education has not suffered at all during this time. I don't have any kids, though, so that's not too difficult. But listen, just to be clear, Karen and her husband actually homeschool their children even when we're not in a coronavirus enforced shutdown. Right. So your state's opening back up. You must be excited about that.
Yeah, it'll be nice to have the parks back in particular. That's one thing the kids are really missing. And our local town had actually just sent an email today before the governor's announcement saying that the pools would be shut down for the whole season, and so would the spray parks. So our kids, you know, they like going places. They like doing things just like any other kid. And that was kind of a kick in the gut for them. But now the city's reconsidering the spray parks. So we may at least get that. And I think we'll get back playgrounds. So it'll be good. It'll be healthy for the kids to be able to get out and see other children and, you know, have fun in a place that's not our backyard.
So Karen, I've got a question. What made you decide to torture yourself? I mean, educate your children.
So a funny story, when my husband and I were dating, we talked about how if we got married and had children, I'd want to stay at home and he'd be the breadwinner. And that was just what was going to work for us, we figured. And I thought to myself, well, gee, if I stay home with the kids, what am I going to do all day? And when they go to school, how would I fill my time? And then I started looking into homeschooling. A friend of mine had been homeschooled, so I was curious about it. And it led down a rabbit hole that eventually I told my husband that we should explore when we have children, and he thought I was completely crazy. But came around to the idea after considering things, just the flexibility of homeschooling, what you can accomplish in that time, and different, somewhat negative. While our entire school experience wasn't negative, there were aspects that were negative. You know, times where you wished you could have taken a higher level class, but a teacher didn't think that you were capable of that. And because of their opinion, rather than actually looking at your academic performance, you didn't get to have that opportunity.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And so you're talking about your husband's Jason, who you know, I know Jason, and I just think the world of. And so you're talking about your own personal experience when you went to school. That was your experience.
Yeah. Okay. So, for instance, when I moved from California at the age of 13 to Michigan, I entered into the 8th grade and wanted to enter into a geometry class without taking the algebra prerequisite. I was asked to take a placement test for the geometry class, and the test that I was handed was all geometry.
So how there was to do that?
Exactly. Yeah. There was no realistic way that I was going to pass that test, and they knew it. And this isn't to reflect on all educators by any means, but there are these pockets in education where things get missed, or people have agendas, and that's just kind of the nature of humanity, right? There's going to be some people with a different slant on things, but we ended up choosing to go through with homeschooling, and have over time it's worked. We've had instances where we did put a kid in school, but overall, it's worked well.
So I think that you're right about this, because you can sort of teach your kids at your own pace, right? I'm thinking back to my own personal experience. I changed schools between second and third grade. And for whatever reason, the records didn't transfer as quickly as we did, right? So they gave me a reading test, and I took this reading test, and they put me in the advanced reading class. And then my record showed up, and like 3 days into school, they found out that I was not in the advanced reading class at my last school, right? And so they moved me to a remedial reading class, like from the advanced all the way down to remedial, right? Like, and it was very frustrating to me, you know, as a third grader, that like I was like, now I'm in this dumb kid class, and I knew I could read, right? And I knew that they knew I could read because they had given me a test and decided I could read. And you know, I don't know if I learned between second and third grade to be a great reader or something, but what I do know is that those kind of policies don't apply if you're homeschooling, right? You can make the decision based on each individual child, and you can tailor it a lot more.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the beauties of homeschooling, is that it's fully customizable based off of what your children need, what schedule your family needs. So if you have a kid who every single morning, like one of my kids, is chronically late to the breakfast table, you know, the kid that just can't get their rear ends up in the morning, so you start later.
Oh, you do? Okay, so you do. Yeah. Oh, you are flexible to them. So you don't tell them that they have to be somewhere at 7:30 in the morning and they've got to be there.
No. There are families that do that, even within the homeschool world. It just doesn't work for us. And it's also why everything that I say here should probably be taken with a grain of salt, because of the fact that homeschooling is so flexible that you really can design a radically different schedule from me and have it work completely for your family.
Okay, so what does a typical day look like for you guys?
So I'll give you, instead of a typical, I'll give you my ideal. Okay. Sometimes it works out this way, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of times it doesn't. But typically what we've fallen into lately has been, for reference, I have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and then a almost 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Okay. Wow. So the grades that my kids were by a traditional academic model were third, first, and kinder, and then toddlers that are just into everything. What I ended up landing on was having a rotation for the children. So the 9-year-old would do individual work with me for 30 minutes, where we're covering either something new or something they have a lot of problems with. Then during that time, the first grader is either working on book work or working on computer drills. Okay. We use a website for drilling addition and subtraction, multiplication, and division for our kids. It works really well for them. So they'll spend time doing that. And then the kindergartner will be helping to wrangle the toddler chaos, and then to try to keep them from destroying the house completely. And then after about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, everyone switches. So then I'm dealing one-on-one with another child. The other child's taking up the computer. The one that was working with me is now on kid duty.
Okay, so can I interrupt you for 1 second? So
absolutely.
If I were to do the math on this, are you saying that your school day is only running maybe like 2 hours a day? Really? Yeah. And what do they do? That's fantastic. This is opening a whole new world. So what do they do? And I think this is helping a lot of people, because there's a ton of parents who are at home right now who are, trying to learn how to navigate this world of distance learning. And I certainly have not mastered it, not even kind of, sort of. And I wish I still had it. I actually threw it away in disgust this weekend. I had this big chalkboard paper that I wrote a big schedule on when this whole thing happened, and we did not follow that schedule even once. And it was awful to me. So the fact that you're telling me you don't have the set schedule, you just have this rotation, and you just make sure these kids get all their stuff done, and they can get it done within 2 hours in the day. What do you guys do for the rest of the day?
Play, do chores, or those 2 hours can sometimes, quite frankly, be elongated into a long period of time if they are choosing to not stick to tasks, and or if the rotation goes awry. Kids are supposed to be on the toddlers, and then I find they've skedoodle off to some other little task that they want to do, usually Legos or something like that. So that I have to rein them back in, and that, of course, eats up time.
Okay.
Ideally, we finish school before lunchtime. Doesn't always work that way.
Okay, great. So that's really amazing. And then, and then, like, where are they in their education? Are they on grade level, or are they ahead of grade level? Are they behind? Where are they?
My kindergartner has finished up kindergarten and is doing first grade work now.
Okay.
So she's fully into her first grade curriculum. My first grader has finished up. He's into his second grade work. My third grader has finished up almost everything, but she does struggle a bit in writing, the mechanics of writing, as well as some math. So we are doing extra work on that, and I'm intentionally not moving her forward yet.
Okay. And will you work with them through the summer?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my intention.
They basically go to school year round.
This time, yes. Every year is different for us because each year the kids have something different that's a hang up for them. There's something that is either clicking really, really well or not clicking at all. Or life comes up. Like recently, our town had a gigantic flood. And we had a bunch of our basement that had to be ripped out. Well, during that time, we're not homeschooling. And right now, we're not homeschooling. We're just letting ourselves kind of recover from that, get the basement back in order, and then we'll get back at it.
Right. Okay. So, and I'm sure Jeff's like, oh.
No, actually, I was just thinking about, because we had a guest on before, Lindsay McDonald, that did world schooling for just one semester, I think, with her kids. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, right now you guys should be traveling. Like there's nothing, like everyone's stuck at home, and you're in Michigan, like you should be like in Yellowstone or something, homeschooling there. Because like I think the national parks are open and there's probably no one there, so it'd be like a great time.
Have they reopened? Because I thought they were closed for a bit.
Yeah, they were closed for a bit. I was looking at this recently. Apparently you can go into the national parks, just like the ranger stations and stuff are closed. But the park gates and stuff are open now. So not all roads, but most roads, it's one of those things.
Yeah. We still haven't quite figured out travel with our kids. We did a trip in January to Florida, and that went really well. But there are also 5 really little kids, so that adds a little bit of difficulty on road trips with bringing all the right supplies. Plus now we have a dog.
Well, yeah, and the pets do throw that off unless you can take them with. I mean, if you had like a motorhome or something, you might be able to do it, right? But one thing we know about Karen, at least Jillian and I know, because we read the Coronavirus Collective, and you wrote a chapter for us in that, and I appreciate it, is that you really liked being at home anyway, right? So you don't actually want to like travel anyway. You'd rather just be at home. And I think you said in the book that for you, the best part of the coronavirus was your husband was forced to stay at home more and he wasn't at work as much, right? So
yes, that's been great. I think it's been more work for him now because he's been a really big help. So, when he's on a break between calls, he'll help prep lunch. If the toddler is getting into mischief and needs to be wrangled, he will like point it out for me. Like, hey, here's what Luke's doing. So, it's been really nice to have that. And by 5 o'clock, he's usually pretty much done with work for the day.
Yeah, that's got to be super nice, actually. In fact, working from home is something that I think, we could almost do an entire show on that, right? So maybe we'll have Jason on next week and talk about how great it is to work from home because like, honestly, I switched to working from home before I quit working, and it was amazing. I mean, it really, and your husband was super helpful for me in that. He helped me work through that process and sort of negotiate my way into working from home because he's like really good at convincing other people to accept your version of reality. So
he is very good at that.
So Karen, I got a couple of more questions. Of course, I have a couple more questions. And so you're going to go through the summer because obviously like summer plans are curtailed. So you might as well fill the time with, I get that. You might as well fill the time with education. I definitely am going to fill my time or my kids' time with a little education, especially since we did such a terrible job over here at homeschooling or distance learning. I guess it wasn't.
I'm sure you've done a lot better than you think.
Don't no. But this is really encouraging because now I can go, all right, look, if you guys get all your stuff done before lunchtime, you have, do you say, like, I'm really thinking about your 9-year-old, right? Because she's the one you could probably have the most of a conversation with. So do you say to her, look, you get all your stuff done by lunchtime, you have the rest of the day, or do they have
Absolutely.
Other things? Okay.
Yeah, I can't count the number of times I've had to say that to the kids where it did not click in. And it's only been recently that the 9-year-old has gotten on the ball. So, before we took a hiatus because of flooding and all of that, she was getting up, pulling out her workbooks, doing her morning routine of getting dressed for the day and putting her sheets back up on her bed, slipping out and doing her bookwork in the morning to try to get done as soon as humanly possible. Because she wanted the day to herself. She wanted to play. And she finally had it click that was the key to doing that.
So then what program do you use, and do you have to like test them at the end of the year to make sure they can go on to the next grade? What's that look like?
I've used a variety of materials. Most commonly, I've used Seton Home Study, which is a Catholic homeschool curriculum that provides a box curriculum. So it's an all-in-one thing. There were some elements of it that I didn't particularly care for or that didn't work for a couple of my kids. So we changed it up for this, I guess you call it this coming school year or current school year for a couple of them. But there's tons and tons of box curricula out there. My state doesn't require me to test my kids to get into the next grade level or to check their progress. So I can kind of assess them myself. With the Seton box curriculum, they actually, if you enroll, they give tests with that. So there is a test that you can have your child take and you can scan it and send it into Seton and they will grade it and put it as part of their record that they keep, that you have access to. And there are parent grades that go with that too, where you can grade your children's enthusiasm or their work performance on other things other than tests.
Okay.
However, going with my own curriculum, I don't plan to really test them because I can see at a glance how well they're doing because I'm working with them each and every day. So I don't need to assess them constantly. But each state has different requirements. So there definitely are states where standardized testing is required. That just doesn't have to be my state.
Okay. So, I want to take this back and because obviously this is really useful for parents, but also for people who are not parents. Like, what is your routine like? Do you have to stick to a routine? Do you have do you get up at a certain time every morning? Do you get something ready? What do you do to get your day going?
Lately, I don't know if it's just COVID and having my husband home, but everything's been kind of loosey-goosey lately. So I don't get up at the same time every day. It's usually whenever the littlest kids wake me up and demand my attention. The waking you up by smushing your face in the morning, asking for cereal. So that sort of thing.
I know that one all too well.
Happens to me all the time too.
Yeah, Becky squishes your face and says,
"No, actually, you know
breakfast."
I have a 14-year-old Chihuahua that will start whining at 9:00 exactly if I'm not out of bed. I mean, I'm usually out of bed well before that, but if I am still in bed at 9:00, she will start whining. It's like an alarm clock because she needs to take her 9:00 in the morning anti-seizure meds, and it's like she knows it's time. That's very strange, actually.
Our dog actually has to get up in the morning too. And oddly enough, she's more interested in me getting her up than anyone else. So she actually won't get out of her crate quite often unless I'm the one getting her out.
So
she'll whine.
Let me ask you, okay, so you do your work, you have this curriculum that you've you either purchase or you sign up for. I don't know how that exactly works, but you can find a curriculum, you sign up. Does it give you a calendar of when these things should, you should look to accomplishing these things, or do you make your own calendar?
It depends on the curriculum. For the ones that I piece together myself, I determine that. For the ones that someone else has created in those box curriculums, a lot of times they give suggested routines, but they always leave it up to the parents as to exactly how to implement that. A lot of curricula has a 4-day-a-week schedule so that the 5th day is open for catch up as needed.
Okay. Oh, very good. Okay. All right, great. And by the way, like, I want to remind everybody who's listening here is that, Karen's been doing this since, way before COVID. So I thought, hey, Jeff and I talked about it and we thought, hey, this would be a great person to have on to kind of help us, get some tips and tricks on how we can implement, and maybe we're a little late because everybody's almost out of school, but how we can get some tips and tricks on getting our kids to get into some kind of routine. And to that end, I want to just point out what Queenie said about having a routine is paramount in their house. And they're not exactly homeschooling. We are crisis learning. It adds another layer, a different challenge. And boy, does it ever. I mean,
sure does.
I know that it's just been, it seems like a lot of things have been upended because of COVID. So.
And actually the real reason I think that we wanted to have you on, Karen, is because Jillian's been struggling with this a lot, right?
Yeah.
And we figured if Jillian's struggling with it, then probably so are other people. And Queenie, I haven't talked to her too much about this particular topic, but she's a good friend of mine. And she's not a friend of mine anymore, as we know, because I unfriended her because she didn't vote for Never Say Goodbye on the polls that we're doing. But before, when she was a friend of mine, we talked about this sort of things.
You threw something out there that like our listeners might not know anything about.
Well, they should be part of the Facebook group, and then they would know. I mean, listen, if you're listening to our show or watching the show, you should be part of the Last Life Ever Facebook group. Queenie's in there. We're having a bracket challenge right now about the best power ballads of all time. And for whatever reason, Bon Jovi's Never Say Goodbye is not winning. And apparently Queenie stands by that. So...
Listen, Derek and I'm not joking. I'm not even kidding. But Derek and I literally had an argument about the brackets this morning because he's like, comes in and he starts telling me what the best power ballad is of all time. And I don't want to say what it is. I'll wait.
Well, it's like on Kick, Love Is On The Way. That just hasn't been up yet. So
yeah. So there's a couple that haven't been up yet, but he's telling me. And then I said, which ones I voted for. And he's like, those aren't even, how could you say that song's better than that song? What's wrong with you? Like he's arguing with me. I'm like, it's not about the best song. It's about like the cheat. So Total Eclipse of the Heart is like, that is the cheesiest song. I used to sing that song to my kids. Derek and I used to sing that song as a kid. Like I'd go turn around every now and then, and you do the spin around. Like, come on, it's ridiculous. That's why it has to win.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I sing Never Say Goodbye to my dogs every day when I leave them. So
we all have our thing. But back to homeschooling. So if you're not in the Facebook group and you want to get in on this nonsense of voting for the best power ballad of all time, you just got to head on over to Facebook and
join the Facebook group.
Yeah. So,
and if you want to hear more about Jillian's struggles, you can come to our happy hour, which we do sometimes. I think the next one's tonight, actually. So
yeah. Okay. So you have this routine, this loose routine of going into rotation, getting everything done by noon. They can do what they want in the afternoon. How do you do extracurricular activities? Are any of your kids in sports? I mean, they're still a little young, but are they in sports, dance, art, anything like that?
Well, we did have swimming lessons on the weekend. Those were canceled, COVID. Pretty much everything was canceled with COVID.
Yeah, life was canceled.
But we were going to a nature center every couple of weeks. The kids were enrolled in nature study classes with other homeschoolers.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So it was a great time for both our littlest guys to get to see some of their little preschool friends from other families, as well as the big kids to just get to hang out with other kids their age.
Mm-hmm. So do any of your kids, now let's just say post-COVID, schools open back up and we can all go back to school. Do any of your kids yearn to be in a regular school environment? Have they ever expressed that to you?
It varies a lot. So for the most part, they really like being homeschooled. They like not having to, So our, the Catholic school they were going to starts at 7:50 in the morning.
Oh my God, that's early.
Yeah. So they would have had to get up extraordinarily early. And my third born is not an early riser. She's the one who struggles to get down to the table by breakfast. So I think for her, it would have been inordinately difficult to attend a brick and mortar school. She would have adjusted, but like we all do. But that would have been tough for her. And I'm not sure that a whole lot of learning would have taken place for at least a few hours into that school session. They miss being able to hang out with friends. They do. They like that aspect. They liked their teachers. And the school did have some extracurriculars. So like a Lego club that they enjoyed. But they really, really love getting done with the school year early. And they especially love being able to take a vacation from school when everyone else who goes to a brick and mortar school is still in session. That really, I don't know if they just view it as a super special thing, but they do. I
kind of think of that like, I know my personality. I would have loved being homeschooled. I mean, I love school, like I really did, but I also really love, being done with things faster than other people, like, and being able to move on. And I also, this one of the reasons I love working for myself is like, if I want to take a vacation in the middle of the year, I can do it, right? Like, and when you get out of school, you don't have to think about things like spring break and fall break and Christmas break. And you don't want to go to Florida, right? During spring break, you want to go in January, like
it's a lot cheaper.
Like you guys did, right? It's cheaper. The beaches aren't as full, all that stuff, right? So, so I think I would have probably really, really loved being homeschooled. I think there's probably positives and negatives for your children.
Oh yeah. The negatives they do feel the negatives, especially with something like COVID. It's still, while our routine didn't change all that much, it still did affect them. They still have yearned to hang out with some of their homeschool friends that they haven't been able to see for quite some time. So COVID definitely impacts them on that. But by and large, they seem to like it.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, I think my kids would hate homeschool because of their teacher, but
well, I can't say that they love me every day for being a teacher. They don't.
So do you think there's a chance for Jillian and her children? Are they going to catch up and be able to go back to school in the fall without failing out miserably?
Oh yeah, you have the whole summer. You have the entire summer to do all the catch up. You do not need to worry about finishing by the end of the school year.
Oh, yay.
I don't think she believes you. I think she's just given up. She's like, you know what? I'm just going to forget about this year and pretend it didn't happen.
Oh, I wish I could. Oh my God. Like
no, it's been a hard year.
Yeah. So, and I already struggled with my kids being in school and just having to monitor that situation. And then to go from just having to monitor to actually having to like be in charge of something was like, it didn't work. It just wasn't happening. But this is giving me, I've got to be honest, this is giving me a lot of hope. And I hope it gives a lot of other parents hope. Yeah. Well, because my biggest thing was like sticking to the schedule. We got to stick to the schedule. And then we never even got to thing one on the schedule. And the fact that you let your third child sleep in, like, that's awesome. Like that they don't have to get up that early. They don't have to be anywhere super early in the morning. They just have to make sure they get this stuff done. And you give them that 45 minutes of attention. And then they give 45 minutes of attention on the computer and 45 minutes of attention to book work. Oh my gosh. Like, my question for you though is, considering your oldest is 9, let's say you get into harder grades like middle school, what do you think that's going to look like? And I'm asking you to predict the future because maybe you don't know.
So I've thought about this a lot, and I always go back and forth on what we'll maybe do. But I tend to think there's a lot of really good online homeschool academies. I think having the ability to have dialogue with other students and with a teacher, that back and forth, especially as you're getting to a grade level where you're able to actually have an independent thought that you can express articulately. I think it's of benefit to kids to practice that. Okay. So particularly classical curricula, where they focus heavily on logic. I'm a little more interested in something like that, particularly something that's based around our faith, because in our household, that's important to us.
Have you found a curricula, like let's just take that logic-based curricula, classical curricula for a second. What have you found in your research that is available out there? I'll put a link in the comments for people to go check out.
One that I've heard of, and of course I can't vet any of these because I haven't personally tried them yet, but I believe Homeschool Connections is a popular one. As well as if a person is pursuing a Catholic focused homeschool, which obviously isn't going to apply to everyone. What was it called?
Well,
I'll link it later. And
then you had
a friend of mine uses it for her kids.
What was the one you were saying earlier? You used Seton, which is a Catholic.
Yes.
School.
Seton has some online components for some of their upper grades, but for another one would be Colby Academy. Colby Academy is yet another Catholic one. Unfortunately, I'm not super well versed in the secular and evangelical groups, just because that hasn't really applied to us. And it's actually Kolby. Sorry, Kolbe, like from St. Maximilian Kolbe.
Okay.
Yeah. So those I guess would be some suggestions, but a website that worked really well for us as we were reviewing some homeschool curricula and other families have liked it is Kathy Duffy Reviews. I can actually, I'll copy that link, I think. Oh, no, I can't tap it in, but I'll put it in the private chat so you can awesome. Copy paste that.
Yeah, Kathy Duff. Oh, this is where you go to get information on where you
Yes.
Could.
So
okay,
this
is perfect.
Yeah, that website has just tons and tons of homeschool curricula reviewed and assessed and summarized. So it gives parents a really good idea of what they might be getting into if they go down that road for that particular curricula. And another really good website was homesciencetools.com. They have a lot of science tools and science kits to help supplement learning within science.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's got to be a tough one, especially if you don't have obviously when you get the higher grades, it gets even more difficult because you don't have a lab and you often need a lab or whatever. So,
well, the great thing about the lower grades is that you actually don't need to do a ton in history or science. You can explore a lot of things based off of their interest while having some sort of umbrella of topics. So let's say you want to do the Middle Ages. Well, you can pick particular topics within the Middle Ages. You don't have to study the whole Middle Ages and do a complete overview. You can study if your son's really into armor and, knights, you can study that. And you can tie in literature about that. There's different fairy tales that have to deal with knights, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask. Wow. So we do have to wrap up here soon. So I'm going to limit Jillian to one more question. So start thinking about your question. But before that, I'm going to ask another question, which is: do you worry about sort of running into gaps of knowledge, like that there might be something that you just don't think of to teach your children that they might have run into if they were in a more traditional setting?
I have worried about that. That's actually something that comes to mind a lot, and I think probably does for most homeschool parents, except for the ones who are extreme veterans who just know what they're doing. But there's certain things, like when my kid went to school, she didn't know the Pledge of Allegiance. She learned that in school. She didn't learn that at home, not because we're not patriotic. It's just not something we covered. Little things like that, that just pop up. You have to really think about, what do they teach in a preschool or a kindergarten? They teach you your address, your phone number, how to write your name, how to tie. Sometimes they're even teaching you how to tie your shoes. All those things you're taking on, but they're not necessarily academic as you think of it. They're not literally teaching your child how to read or teaching your child how to do math.
Right. You're not going to miss those, right? You're going to remember to teach multiplication and reading. The question is,
remember the basics.
Yeah, that, because I've been like, I've met people that, just went to a different school than I did, right? And then I'll be talking about something that I think every person in the world knows about, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. And so you're going to, everyone, no matter where you go to school, there's going to be some stuff you cover and some stuff you don't, because you can't cover all of human knowledge. No matter how good of a teacher you are, that's not going to happen. But I think I would be pretty worried about it. So it makes sense to me. You are. Yeah. Do you create a checklist or something?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I actually have, and my husband's actually really good about this. As you know, Jason is good at checklists and
not surprising,
crossing all his T's, dotting his I's. But we have before had like a list of things we want the kids to learn, that we might not necessarily think of outside of that. Honestly, tying shoes was one of them. But in the end, whether you go to public school, private school, or homeschool, you will always have a gap in your education to some extent. You never know everything there is to know. The good thing is, if you are able to teach your kids how to read, how to write effectively, and how to do basic mathematics, that will carry them extremely far. Anything else really can probably be learned along the way.
Right. Right.
As long as they have Wikipedia or whatever, right? Because
they have to read. Really. So that doesn't mean that, you just do those things and neglect all the rest, but it means there's a certain level of just accepting the fact that you're human, they're human, and they're only going to soak up so much, and you're only going to remember to teach so much, and that's okay.
I do have one last question before we wrap up. And we've been asking this from the last couple of guests we've had, because we're going to try to start a reading club so we can be more educated ourselves. So we want to know what book you recommend to read. And so far we've been getting novel recommendations. What are you going to write it down, Jeffrey? Are you getting ready?
Yeah, because I'm starting to forget all the ones that we've covered because I haven't been writing them down. So I'm ready right now.
So I will admit readily that it has been, I assume you're not talking about novels.
You can write, it can be any book you recommend.
Except the Bible. Do not recommend the Bible, because I can't get through the whole thing in a short period of time.
So my recommendation, it's actually homeschool related, and it is not a novel, but it's The Well-Trained Mind, a guide to classical education. This mother taught her 2 children or 3 children using the classical model of education back in the 70s when homeschooling was unpopular. And then her daughter went on to get a PhD and ended up homeschooling her own children as well. So together they joined forces to write this book that has basically, if you want to teach the classical method of education, it lays it completely out for you.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a recent read of mine that I've enjoyed really plowing through, but it gets into the nitty gritty of what to do on a year-by-year basis.
And it does sound like something that would be useful for people even if they weren't homeschooling, right? Because it's, it would seem like the principles of understanding classical education would be beneficial to almost everyone.
And understanding how children learn too, what their brains are capable of. at different ages changes, and we have to kind of roll with that and how we gear their education.
That's awesome. That's a great recommendation. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being with us today. Jeff, see how I formalized that?
Yes, Jilly Jill.
Do we have any parting words for our audience?
Just join the Facebook group. Do all the things that you can to support us, because we need your support, because we do this for you. And if we don't have the support of our audience, then we don't have an audience, and then there's no show. So.
Yes. So support us by buying the Coronavirus Collective, which supports 4 charities.
Yes, and it doesn't actually support us, but we do want you to buy it anyway, because it's a great thing. Karen wrote a chapter, I wrote a chapter, Jillian wrote a chapter, and a whole bunch of other people. Yeah, it sort of sounds like everyone wrote a chapter, but it's about 30 different authors writing about their experience in the first few weeks of the shutdown. And I found it to be incredibly motivating and uplifting, and the money all goes to charity. So that's a good reason to buy it anyway. So, all right. Anything else, Jillian? Are we good?
I'm good.
All right,
Bye.
then. Bye, Karen.
Never gonna take my freedom.